Welcome to another edition of the Ashmore Law Firm Google Plus Hangout. We're always trying to bring you interesting topics, and I think you're going to love this one this week. Lori Ashmore Peters, hello. Nice to see you again. Gary Ashmore, wave to the crowd. Christy here, and of course our special guest Brian Cuban, a best-selling author on Shattered Image, My Triumph Over Body Dysmorphic Disorder. Wow. Very courageous of you to come out and write this book and talk about your history, and we appreciate you coming on. Just for people that haven't read the book or don't really know what it's about, I'm going to give a background of what this is all about.
Sure. The book chronicles my journey from childhood through anorexia, then bulimia, alcoholism, drug addiction, near suicide, 2 trips to a psychiatric facility before I finally turned it around in 2007 and was able to restore my family, restore my self-image, and restore my life.
Obviously, it takes a lot of courage to come out in public and do this. What inspired you to do this and to be so public about it?
Well, I think like a lot of most self-help books, self-help memoirs, it really started out as a recovery journey for myself, where the writing was part of making myself feel better and getting my thoughts out there and releasing a lot of emotion. But it morphed into the realization that there were so many people out there who feel like they are so alone, like I did, because there's so much stigma and stereotyping going around eating disorders, especially for a male, and body dysmorphic disorder, which is thought about as a female disorder. So I decided it was very important to speak out and let people know that they're not alone and that there is hope and that at any age you can recover. Don't wait. I hope you won't wait as long as I did, but it happens at any age.
Are you surprised at all the attention you've gotten? And what has inspired you for maybe some of the stories that you're hearing now that you're helping other people?
A week doesn't go by when I don't get an email from a man or a woman saying, I thought I was the only one. Thank you for speaking out. That inspires me. That's all I need. The thought that I could be helping one person in the world. If I only help one person on this entire planet, the whole thing's worth it.
And the fact that you're out there now, obviously everybody knows your brother, Mark Cuban. How does that help you or hinder you in this situation?
Well, as it stands now, it helps me. If someone's only going to bring me on because I'm Mark's brother, that's fine with me, because whatever gets my message out there. Now, you'll never hear me introduce myself that way because I have my own identity and own brand. But from a marketing standpoint, that's fine with me. The relationship helps. Now, if you were to go back 10 years, there was a point where I didn't really have my own identity, or further than 10 years, maybe 12 years. I didn't have my own identity. I didn't know who I was. I was deep in drug addiction, 3 failed marriages, and the attention sort of gave me a self-identity that I didn't have, even though it wasn't mine. So it became easier than to be Mark Cuban's brother, than to work on myself. And that led to a really heavy descent into more drugs and alcohol, because all of a sudden I'm getting attention from women. All of a sudden I don't have to stand in line in nightclubs and people buy you drinks. And it was never about me. I call it sort of like the Fredo syndrome. It was never about me. And it's certainly not Mark's fault. It was my inability to move into a good place of self-image and move forward in recovery.
How do you get out of how do you get out of a spiral like that? How difficult is that? How did you make it through? And if you had to give advice to somebody else that's going through that, what's the I don't want to say the easiest part, because it's probably not easy, but what's the first step to do that?
The first step for me, and I don't diagnose people I don't know. The first step for me was to realize that I was powerless to take control of my addictions and my eating disorders, and I was going to have to rely on peer support to be able to take that first step. And the first step really was standing in the parking lot of Green Oak Psychiatric Facility for the second time down there, and thinking that I was probably not going to have a third trip, I was going to die, and even worse than that, thinking that I was going to lose my family. Because family may love you unconditionally, but there are probably going to be limits on their willingness to watch you destroy your life if you're not going to at least try to take that first step. I mean, every family, and mine's no different, has to struggle with that gray area between love, enablement, and recovery. And we had to struggle through that too. I worked for Mark for 9 years. There were times where he threatened to drug test me, threatened to fire me because I wasn't showing up for work. So we struggled with that issue as well.
You know, Brian, I work a lot with the mentally ill, and I work a lot with families that have children that have addictions. And a lot of times, you know, I mean, I know you've talked about in your life when it hit you that you needed to actually get the help. I have parents asking, you know, when is enough enough? When do I turn my back because we've tried for years and years and just can't get through to our child? I mean, what advice would you give me or anyone else out there to try to get that child some help?
That's a great question. The first place I think we have to go there with the parents is the understanding that it's not their fault. Whether it's eating disorders, drug addiction, they're biologically based. And, you know, genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger, and we don't really know which one's more important at this right now, our current state of science. Some studies say genetics is more important. Some studies say environment is more important. But in a lot of these cases, we have blame. I mean, the vast majority of them, we have parents trying to deal with their own blame, so they're going through their own recovery, watching their child and trying to deal with that. So in order to help your child, you have to get good with the fact that it's not your fault. I always recommend that regardless of what's going on with their child, the parent be in therapy. And therapy directed at whether it's an eating disorder they're dealing with in the family, addiction they're dealing with. You know, self-care is important because if you don't have self-care, you can't help your child. And then the next step from that is deciding what kind of therapy we need. Do we need FBT, family-based therapy? Sometimes that's not appropriate to start because there is so much blame going on, and family-based therapy can really intensify that because you have everyone in there saying, you know, trying to deflect guilt, which they shouldn't have. So we need parents to be able to understand where their guilt is coming from before we go into family-based therapy. And at that point, FBT could be a good fit.
That's a great answer. That's great. I love the fact that you're saying that, you know, the parents, they do take on that guilt and it's not their fault. You talk about addiction with cocaine. You talk about addiction with drugs, with eating. But addiction can be a lot of things. It could be money. It could be job.
Yeah,
it could be.
I mean, there's substance abuse. There's substance use disorders. There's process addictions, gambling, you know, shopping. There are all kinds of things. I didn't go those routes. But yes, there are all kinds of addictions. Food addiction is a new, you know, something that's now being more popular and being discussed and studied. There are certainly different schools of thought on whether that's really an addiction. Sugar addiction, different schools of thought on that. But yes, there are all kinds of addictions. There's the substance, and then there's the process addictions.
Right, and the point I was going to get on that is I bet this book could help people that aren't just dealing with addictions you're talking about. Aren't they all similar, that people can get something from your book, whether it's an addiction with money, drugs, gambling, all that kind of stuff, because you're tied to something?
Well, what I found is that there were a lot of messages that I didn't even intend when I wrote the book. Bullying is one of them. I get a lot of questions about bullying. I was bullied severely. I was physically assaulted over my weight, and I turned into a bully. And so I think there are a lot of issues around bullying there. And all of these things came together to cause body dysmorphic disorder starting when I was about 18 years old. And what body dysmorphic disorder is when you take a small or non-existent defect in your body and exaggerate it to the point where it affects your ability to function, quote, normally, unquote, in life. For some people, for me, it was my stomach. I was fat shamed at home. I was bullied at school. So all I saw was this fat child in the mirror, this monster, no matter how thin I got, or I abused steroids, no matter how big I got. So those things didn't work, and I cycled through all these destructive behaviors just to change this horrific image I saw in the mirror. Cocaine, steroids, eating disorder, alcohol, and none of them helped. None of them made me feel any better about myself, and none of them, caused me to to move into any kind of positive behaviors. I also abused plastic surgery. I got hair transplants and liposuction until I went broke. And you see that a lot with body dysmorphic disorder. I get emails from men especially where they have a pimple on their face, they can't leave the house. I've seen suicides as a result of body dysmorphic disorder. It is a very new, even though it's been around, body dysmorphia, it's been around for 100 years, body dysmorphic disorder in itself as a DSM-5 diagnosis is still being understood, still being newly studied and understood. And by newly, I mean for the last 10 years. The pioneer in the field is a lady called Dr. Catherine Phillips, who wrote a book called The Broken Mirror, which is kind of like the Bible.
Okay. All right.
So I do have a question because here's your book and I have read it. And is there anything that anyone could have said to you while you were going through all of your experiences from childhood until you decided to get the help that would have told you what you're seeing in the mirror isn't what people see of you?
Well, I get asked that a lot, and my answer is that I hate to engage in what I call revisionist recovery, because I can't go back and change that. I was born in the 1960s. My father is a World War II vet, Korea vet. Gender roles were very defined. The woman's role in the home was very defined. My mother had mental illness on her side. Her mom had bipolar disorder, so there was a genetic component. So I don't like to comment on that, but here's what I will tell you, that I talk to my 13-year-old self all the time. There's even a blog on my website called A Letter to My 13-Year-Old Self. And from that standpoint, I think there is benefit. Guys don't like to hear it, but I say talk to your inner child. I have a talk with that child all the time. I talk to a 13-year-old little boy in therapy all the time. Therapy I go to every week. And I tell that little boy that he's loved, that it's not his fault. It wasn't his mother's fault. She was raised how she was. She was abused. He is loved just because he didn't think he was. He was. And to find somebody who you love and to trust somebody and to speak out. I never told my father. I wish I would have gone to my father, but I was afraid that in the mind of a 13-year-old little boy, he was going to kick me out of the house because he's married to my mother. I would have told that 13-year-old little boy to speak out, confide in someone. That's what I would tell him.
Okay. And
wow, that's great. I like that.
And one reason why I ask is again, when I'm meeting with the patients, and if they say that the sky is purple, it's because that is their reality and that is truly what they're seeing.
Sure.
And there's nothing that anyone else can say to get through to them that no, it's really blue and it's sun shining outside. And so a lot of times,
without knowing exactly what the person's going through, that would be hard for me to comment on. Other than that's something that can be addressed in therapy. I mean, from a body dysmorphic disorder standpoint, I can tell you when I see in the mirror that fat kid, here's what I did.
Well, and it's a great idea that I never thought of, is to tell the family, the parents, to get therapy on how to deal with it all.
That's right, and not just their general therapist. They need to be in therapy that is designed to revolve around the blame associated with eating disorders or addiction in a child in the family. That may be a lesser form of family-based therapy, but it's someone who has to have experience in that versus just tell me about your feelings. I strongly believe that you have to be in targeted therapy. But for me, I went through, let's talk about the protocols for me. I went through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which was very important, to test my thoughts and realize that people were not thinking what I would projected they were thinking about me. When I walk into a room, everyone doesn't think I'm bald, fat, and ugly. When I take off my shirt in a swimming pool, everyone isn't saying, look at that fat pig. That's cognitive behavioral therapy, and you start small and you work bigger. It's a process. The next was ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, which was identifying thoughts, especially as I get older, and realizing those thoughts aren't real. I don't have to engage in a CBT-like protocol to get rid of those thoughts. I just realized that's just not, I can dismiss those thoughts. And so those are the two things. Role-playing with my younger self was very important to realizing that if I see the sky is blue, it's really not blue. Or if I think it's gray and it's really blue. So those were the things that I went through.
Okay.
All right.
I don't
Gary,
think
I know
it's
you.
appropriate for me to comment on what someone else should be doing.
Right. You're just saying your experiences, and hopefully that can help.
That was
somebody.
my protocol. That was my treatment protocol.
Yeah.
And it still is.
All right. Gary Ashmore, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. Brian, let me ask you this. I do a lot of the family law here at the firm and you know, the litigation and all that mess. How would you advise, or how would I advise the spouse who's dealing with their other spouse that has this addiction that's causing the breakup of their marriage? You know, where would you recommend to them that they go to understand what their spouse is going through?
Okay, well, now we're getting into some legal issues, and I have to disclose that I have not kept my license up, so I'm not giving legal advice. It's not suspended.
No,
I just haven't kept it up. I don't know. My first advice would be the same. Get into therapy for yourself. Okay? Because without dealing with how that could affect the legal situation,
right?
You know, once spouse is in therapy, that still self-care is always going to be the first stop. Get into therapy for yourself and work on you.
Right.
Because if you work on you, then you're better able to work on your child, and then you may be better able to respond in court.
Yep. No, I understand that. And I wasn't looking from a legal perspective. I was looking from explaining to my clients that they need to understand that either their child or that their spouse is going through a problem, an addiction, that they need to understand themselves so that they can better deal with the family unit after the fact.
And that's where it helps to say, okay, you're going through this. Here are the therapists I recommend.
Right.
Here's Al-Anon. Here are the support groups. I think it's going to be the same regardless. Work on yourself, self-care, because if you're a mess, you can't help your child. You can't help your soon-to-be ex or your spouse you're trying to reconcile with. You have to be present in your own recovery to do any good in someone else's recovery.
It almost sounds like what you're saying, and I kind of like this aspect, is don't blame the situation. The situation's horrible. You can only work on yourself, make yourself better, and you could probably deal with the situation better.
It's all you have control over. I mean, if your child's under 18, obviously you have control in that you can force your child into recovery. Not that that's going to help if they're not ready for it. But that aside, all you have control over are your limbs and your mouth. So work on those.
Man, some great information today. Everybody that's watching, this is his book, Shattered Image, Brian Cuban. We appreciate you coming on. I mean, you've been on Katie Couric, and now you've been on the Ashmore Law Firm Google Hangout.
It was a wonderful conversation. Feel free to ask me back anytime.
Man, you were great. We appreciate your time, and thank you everybody for watching. And don't forget, we do these once a month. Ashmore Law Firm Google Plus Hangouts. You can catch them up on YouTube, and you can also get y'all's free information on law on the website. So thank you everybody for watching. And thank you, Brian.
Can I pitch my website?
Bye-bye.
What's that?
Can I pitch my website?
Go for it.
Yeah, you can. Anyone who ever has any questions can email me at Brian with an I at briancuban.com. Any recovery-related questions, and you can also go to my website at www.briancuban.com to see what I write. You know, a lot of the things I've written, and you can contact me there too.
And also on Twitter, people can follow you on Twitter.
Twitter, bcuban. I also blog for psychcentral.com. You can find me there. I'm all over the place.
Easy to find. That's always key. We appreciate you coming on, and thanks for your honesty and your openness about everything you've gone through. And good luck with everything.
Thank you, and it was a wonderful talk. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Okay,
Brian.
thank you.
Bye.